All right, let's focus on the IPO market. Joining me right now, Greg Martin, co-founder, managing director of Rainmaker Securities. Thank you for being here. So, 2021 was looking good for, we had 2020 COVID. 2021 was good news for IPOs. Then 2022, everything started drying up. And there was a lot of excitement when Cava, the Mediterranean food, casual dining type of place, did so well here at the New York Stock Exchange. How would you quantify how the IPO market has been improving in 2023?
It is interesting because I think it was sort of a ho-hum, start to 2023. And then Cava, a company that not a lot of people followed, kind of came up and really demonstrated some interesting demand for growth stocks again. Obviously, we've seen, the NASDAQ perform well, which is an indicator of demand for growth stocks. And so, that was a little bit of a precursor, but Cava is a company that not a lot of people, really knew and understood. But and the numbers aren't particularly great for Cava unless you really dig into the metrics. So I think Cava has reawakened interest in IPOs, and then we saw a follow up from Cava with Oddity Technology, which is also up about 47% since it went public a little less than a month ago. And so I think there's rejuvenated interest in the IPO market, and I think that bodes well for many companies who want to go public in the next 12 to 18 months.
Right, understood. I remember Cava, how it just basically took off. It was incredible, right? And it went as high as $58. I think this was a, $17 IPO or something like that. Now, what's ahead for the second half of the year when we talk, the types of listings, the amount of money these listings are for?
Yeah, well, I think that we will see a careful titration of companies come into market. I think underwriters want to make sure they create, stability around new issuances. And so I do expect that we will see a few companies, like an Instacart, Arm, Turo, to trickle into the IPO market in Q3, maybe early Q4. We have to remember the IPO bar is still very high. If you think about, what investors' alternatives are, you can buy basically risk-free muni bonds here in California for a 6.2% pre-tax return. So it's a lot different than it was back in 2021 when rates were near zero. So I do think there will be a careful selection process, and I do think we will see, 3 or 4 of these companies that I mentioned go public in the next, quarter. And if they succeed along the lines where Cava and Oddity succeeded, the floodgates could, come open as we see some more stabilization of rates and people feeling better about the economy in general.
Right. And just to correct myself, because I said maybe $17. So the range for Cava, by the way, was 17 to 19, and then they ended up pricing it at $22. And when you look at Cava right now, it's at over $50. Tell me about some of the big names. What could be Instacart, Turo, Databricks, Stripe? Can you get into some of those names so people get a little excited for that back half of the year?
Yeah, well, listen, the reason Cava was so exciting because it represents great growth. They had a new Mediterranean restaurant concept. There's a lot of opportunity for them to continue growing great economics. And I think you start to look for big growth opportunities out there. Turo's one, is creating this sort of peer-to-peer rental car agency. Turo filed in January of 2022 and has continued to kind of update their S1. So I think we expect Turo to come out shortly. Instacart has been talking about going public for over 2 years now, and I think that they had a good 2022. They kind of publicly reported their numbers, which is usually a precursor to going public. So I think we expect Instacart to come shortly. Arm, I think a lot of people. Arm's a huge one. $50 billion kind of valuation range. Obviously, a significant player in the mobile semiconductor space, and with the success of NVIDIA this year. The semi space, they're back in favor, and so and especially since SoftBank has talked about divesting its ownership in Arm, we expect those, and then you have the really big ones that could be public whenever they want. Technically, you have Databricks, which is sort of hovering in the 35 to 40 billion valuation range. You have Stripe, which recently did around at 50 billion, and then of course you have ByteDance, which owns TikTok, which is probably in the 200 billion range. And of course, they have all kinds of potential issues with relates to government regulation of TikTok, but it's still a fantastic business that's used by hundreds of millions of Americans every day. So there's a lot of excitement around these big private companies, and it'll just be interesting to see the progression from maybe a few IPOs to whenever some of the bigger ones I mentioned decide to tap the markets.
Right. I mean, SpaceX, what about that one? Elon Musk he knows how to take something public.
or X, his new company, which used to be called Twitter.
Right.
I think SpaceX will be a spin out probably of the Starlink business, which is their communications network. It's probably a little premature. I mean, it's growing fast and driving a significant private market valuation for SpaceX, and we see a ton of SpaceX trading happening in the private secondary markets, where Rainmaker focuses, and that tends to be a very good leading indicator for future IPO activity. And we're starting to see a lot of traditional, IPO or public market investors come back into the private markets because they see new growth opportunities and they want to get involved in these companies before they go public.
Right, understood. Well, we've had a great start so far. We'll see what happens. Greg Martin, thank you so much. Rainmaker Securities. Thank you.